Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this edition this week of Crashes and Taxes. Thanks for joining me. I apologize for not doing a podcast last week. I was in New York for the most of the week and just did not have the time to actually do this. If you guys are used to my podcast, like it and share it, please give it a 5-star review. Send it to your friends and family. Definitely need to get the view counts up with the amount of information we're giving out. That's really solid, great information. We want to get the view counts out. And there's some great podcasts I've done that really all Americans should really know. So let's get started for this week. Now, this is a holdover from the previous podcast because I had mentioned in the previous podcast one of the ways they were going to bring about the smart cities. And again, we were talking about basically having soil and water be condemned through all of these train derailments, chemical explosions, warehouse explosions. And this was an article from The Guardian, which was basically analyzing in February that we were having a chemical accident every 2 days. And I just was bringing this out to show you guys this is a planned thing. And I don't think I actually covered this slide in the last podcast. So I just wanted to bring it back up so that you guys could see, even in mainstream liberal sources like The Guardian and based in the UK, this is something that's definitely being seen and reported. This is also happening in Spain and Italy and Europe. This is happening all over. We talked about AI on the last podcast as well. And I wanted to bring this up because the AI wars have begun is basically what we're saying. Obviously, Microsoft, OpenAI was bought by Microsoft, not founded by Microsoft. Elon Musk was one of the original, I would say, data scientists that was bringing OpenAI and ChatGPT to the forefront, got sold to Microsoft. And now Microsoft is basically threatening to restrict data sharing between rival AI search tools. This is a problem for AI because people, and this is really going to be so interesting from an intellectual or what we call an intellectual property or IP perspective, because the whole point of AI is to have every piece of information synthesized and digitized so they can be in a huge database and can be accessed on the fly for whatever sophisticated advanced query that someone is making. If we have sort of a break of, like, let's just take the two biggest, Microsoft and Alphabet, which would be Google. If we have a break between Microsoft and Google comes out with its own sort of ChatGPT version, then only that version would be giving you the data that AI database contains, whereas Microsoft is already stating they are going to not participate in outside AI information. So it's really interesting that we have ultimately a large repository of all digitized information, and that's ultimately what we'll get to. But in the meantime, there will be these wars. This staying along and finishing up this AI topic that we went through really in the last podcast with economics, I just want to point out here, this is in February, in February, where previous CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, basically is admitting that the military AI that exists right now, and this is something that I've been basically discussing with you guys, how far advanced AI is that the American population is not aware of. Our government can do a lot in the name of our security. This is for your security, but they have not. This is very highly classified private information. They have not shared this. Obviously, Eric Schmidt, in a position of confidence and internal knowledge, inside knowledge, has information about the AI that is military AI, militarized AI. And he is making the public statement that it is as powerful as nuclear weapons. So this is further substantiation of my submission to you on this podcast that AI is at a precipice as well, and that at this point, further implementation of AI is going to immediately and directly result in the loss of, specific human jobs, which is not, I'm not saying that's a problem. I mean, this is where we're headed. We are moving into AI robotics. However, I'm just trying to point out to you guys that as we start to move into this new era, we as citizens need to demand our government disclose to us the military AI capabilities that they have. And I know you're saying, well, they're not going to do that because then the whole world will know. But here's the problem. Our government exists to protect our rights. So they can't obscure our rights in the process of protecting our rights. And this is exactly what they're doing. They want to say all the time, national security, national security, national security. But if you have to protect the information from the American people in order to protect the national security of the American people, that's problematic. Because the American people are the check and balance on the government. And if the government can obfuscate and obscure everything it doesn't want us to know they have the capability of doing just by stating simply that it's a matter of national security, then we really are completely being run by our government and not the other way around. We're supposed to be running the government, not them running us. So I just want to point out that this AI is going to have a lot of stuff coming out this year. A lot of revelations going to be coming out this year on the AI robotic space. And I think people are going to be quite shocked, but this is just a preparation for some future revelations. All right, let's move to economics now. So this is really distressing and very much concerning. And for everybody that thinks that the banking crisis is now resolved and everything is fine, again, I believe I've been very clear on this podcast and in all of my interviews that they have only bought themselves time. That is all they've done. And here is a chart. This is a Y chart from March 25th that shows this absolutely clearly. This is the U.S. commercial bank deposits. So these are all commercial businesses, not individual accounts, individual personal accounts. These are commercial bank deposits. And what I want you to see is if you look here at this 2008, 2009 crisis, you look how much the commercial deposits pulled back in 2009. This was the global financial crisis. So now look here, March of 2022, and you can see that we have retracted even farther than what we did in commercial banking deposits in 2008, 2009. That is, we are down $650 billion from our peak. It's 3.5% off of our highs. And this is the largest drawdown in deposits in the last 20 years, surpassing the drawdown that happened in GFC. So now, as commercial accounts get drawn down, less liquidity exists for all these commercial depositors, which means they're now looking at credit lines, potentially cutting dividends, potentially no one's actually issuing new shares. Their buybacks are going to get canceled. Everything that costs money is going to dry up in a situation where we have our commercial bank deposits down by literally 3.5%, the largest withdrawal or drawdown in over 20 years, and way bigger than even the last crisis. So I tell you this to really clearly let you know that no, we are not through this banking crisis. It is going to become exacerbated. It might take it might take till summer because the Fed and all of the things that that has happened with this consortium of countries that I've mentioned to you, Canada, England, United States, the Swiss National Bank, Bank of Japan, Bank of England. So basically, we have 6 parties, Bank of Japan, I mentioned, coalescing together to kind of give credit swaps and backstop each other. But all of these things are really going to be superfluous and not have a huge impact because the banking crisis is going to be, the liquidity crisis, I should say, is far from over. I just passed this slide. I just wanted to quickly turn to all things BRICS and international. This is from March 29th in Foreign Affairs, where Xi Jinping is basically telling China they are preparing for war. I mentioned this before. We had boots on the ground, internal people telling us directly that in 2021, 2022, and mostly in 2022, when they were locking people down again because they had that COVID zero policy, they were telling people directly that they were moving from peacetime to wartime and they were going to war with America. So I just keep getting more and more and more information coming out in the mainstream for information that we've known in the deep channels for a couple like 18 months now, that China is positioning for a war with America for whatever reason. Not sure, but obviously his alignment with Russia, him traveling to Moscow and to Russia this past month to meet with Putin, and for Putin to then say, was she there, that he was willing to start selling transactions and infecting transactions with about 10 plus countries in the digital yuan. A lot of problems there. This is the Chinese holdings of U.S. treasuries. And what is really fascinating is they really hit a peak in 2011 and again in 14. But since then, they have obviously greatly decreased. Our peak was 2010. That was our previous low. You can see July of 2010 on this chart. And now back to January, they have dumped $250 billion in the last 24 months. So we now have China holding the least amount of treasuries since 2010, some 13 years ago. But what we're seeing, and if you'll look and see, you'll see a massive, in the last 12 months, a substantial decline from January of 2022 to present day, January 2023, when this chart goes through, which is from Bloomberg, showing that China's really dropping their holdings of treasuries. And of course, you guys are familiar with the term the Sandman. And the Sandman is a consortium of countries. This is a internet rumor. I do not have any substantiation or documentation that this is actually happening, but we do know the president of Kenya came out and warned his Kenyan citizens to go ahead and dump the dollar because there was going to be a systemic event. Now, whenever a president of a country that has a securities regulator comes out and says something like this, the securities regulator usually looks at the market and makes a determination of whether or not that was a price manipulative pronouncement, or if it was just based on legitimate information. And they did do that in Kenya. They did look at whether or not this was a pronunciation to move the markets, because obviously Kenya could short dollars and then make an announcement like that and make money off the dollar dropping if they were shorting the dollar, which means they're betting for the dollar to drop. But in fact, the securities regulator found that no, the pronouncement was not to move markets, but was in fact based on legitimate information. So there is this rumor about over 100 countries deciding to dump dollars all at the same time. To me, this does not make logical sense, because countries, even if they care about collapsing the US dollar, they would still self-rationalize that behavior, trying to get the highest price point on their way out and on the exit. And if you were to coordinate dumping your dollars with multiple countries all at the same time, you're going to cause an actual systemic drop of that dollar, and you're going to create a global black swan event, and you're going to get the worst price you could possibly get. So I don't see countries betting against themselves in that way, even though they think that they would achieve a higher purpose of basically ridding in one day the world of the US dollar as the global reserve. So if you do hear references to Sandman, this is what that is referring to. You can see JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon is stating as of today that the current banking crisis is not yet over, and that even when it's behind us, there are going to be repercussions for years to come. So right now, the big banks are sitting pretty, because a lot of the regionals are losing all the deposits, and they're going to the big banks because of Janet Yellen's testimony before Congress, where she basically said that the regionals would not be backed up beyond FDIC, and the big banks potentially would, because they're globally systemically important banks. It's a mess. It is a true mess right now. But the point I want you to see is that I have others that are absolutely agreeing with me that, in fact, we are not going to be seeing the end of the banking problem anytime soon. This is a really great graphic by our charts. And basically, it's talking about the government's 2022 budget, just so you could see. You can see here that the individual income tax brought in 2.63 trillion, that the corporate tax brought in 0.42 trillion, and that Social Security, so these are our payroll taxes for Medicare and Social Security, that brought in 1.5 trillion. So we bring in a total revenue picture of, basically close to close to 5 trillion, a little bit under 5 trillion, just barely. And then you can see, there you go, right there, 4.9 trillion. And then you can see all of the places we spend: 1.22 trillion in Social Security, 9.9 trillion, so 900 billion on healthcare, 870 billion on income security, Social Security payments, 1 trillion on defense and veterans, not broken out, Medicare, 76, which is, so that Medicare is separate and apart from the health, which is probably Medicaid, which is state administered but federally funded. Education, 0.68 trillion, interest on our debt, 0.48 trillion, and other 0.3 trillion. So we're spending 6.27 trillion. We're bringing in 4.9 trillion, leaving us an annual deficit of almost 1.5 trillion annually. And then that gets added to our debt, which right now is obviously, I can actually tell you our debt right now is publicly being reported. I believe it's 33 trillion, but let me just look at that before I tell you for sure. And then I brought this chart up because I wanted you guys to see gold and how gold is performing right now. And I wanted to specifically talk to you about gold because yesterday, gold popped above the 2000 intraday, didn't close. Yeah, okay, so 31.660. And that's obviously gone down because we just had a massive tax collection so far this spring up until April 15th. So basically, yesterday, gold was intraday trading above 2,000, but just barely. And now you can see, this is my Wall Street Journal benchmark. And you can see just a few minutes ago, gold is at $20.40 and 20 cents an ounce, silver at $25.10 an ounce. And I thought this chart would be really good to come back to. But let me just go back to this. You can see straight across the board, all of our industrials, our NASDAQ technical, S&P, all down. But here's what I want to point out to you. Crude is also down to 79.96. So yesterday, after the world processed OPEC deciding to cut another 1.66 million barrels per day. That is added to the 1.7 that was already cut. So now we've got approximately 3.4 million barrels cut. Now that is about it's under 3.7% of total daily consumption of oil. So what is happening is yesterday, as oil peaked, gold also peaked because basically you're going back into commodities, you're going back into industrials, you're going to have gold peak up. But the reason I care about gold today specifically is now that we've already ingested the price constraints on oil has dropped back down. It was trading, crude benchmark for June delivery was trading at 84.46 yesterday. We're seeing it now back down to sub 80. And yet gold is still advancing and actually has advanced quite substantially today, over 2%. At one point, it was 2.3%. So gold is still advancing, even in the absence of oil continuing to advance on the OPEC announcement just these last couple of days. So that indicates to me that we're getting some broader depth and breadth of other issues where gold is looking as, again, a safety asset. You can see this is a little joke that I pulled up for you guys. And basically the joke is a hedge fund manager specializing in highly complex derivatives and exotic financial instruments for discriminating investors, meaning accredited investors. And then the derivative and hedge fund guy saying, buy gold. So if you guys have been listening to the podcast since 2021 and you have listened to us and bought either physical, and we also do like some paper for a lot of accounts, and you have done that, you are going to be super happy with the fact that you listened to our advice. Gold is not going to be going down anytime soon because this market is about to get even rockier. We are going to go through a transition at this time in this year. When it starts, I can't be sure, but I can tell you that we won't get out of 2023 without some major economic upheavals happening. It's amazing that we got out of 2022 as well as we did, even though the market was a pullback year and we obviously performed very poorly. Considering everything that is happening globally, we actually got away with 2022 not so bad, but 2023 is a brace yourself year. And for people that are thinking that it's anything else, they're just wrong. They just do not understand where we are in the world. And that's okay. That's life. That happens. But it's, it's for us to keep letting people know, like, make sure you have a plan. That plan needs to have a substantial amount of liquid cash available to at least get through 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even 12 weeks of some problems. Have some food, a good couple of weeks of food and water, and some cash to get through any rough times that do come our way as we go through this massive transition. The Fed Now platform went live on April the 3rd, Monday, April 3rd. It doesn't get launched until July, but it is now active and live. So we are one step closer to central bank digital currency, which all the central bankers of the world are planning on pushing us into this year, 2023. Last piece of information is the Trilateral Commission announced in the last 10 days that 2023 was the first year of the New World Order. Trilateral Commission is a NGO consolidated group of multiple parties, similar to, but completely different than the World Economic Forum. But it's very much a globalist organization that lets people know kind of what the global central planners are thinking is going to come to the world. And they're basically saying it's the first year of the New World Order, which again indicates that there is some kind of coordinated plan to move multiple countries to central bank digital currencies and away from a lot of their autonomy and protections and currency freedoms that we have by having an autonomous and anonymous currency, meaning that you could go into a flower shop with cash and buy flowers and no one ever knew you're there and they don't even know who you are, but you just bought the flowers with cash. That will all end as we implement digital IDs to implement central bank digital currencies, where every single transaction that you ever make will be recorded at the central bank Federal Reserve directly. So this is all a big problem that we are attacking every single day. Thank you guys for being a loyal audience. Please keep pushing out this to your friends and family so we can grow our audience. So it keeps making my schedule, because eventually my schedule gets so busy that if this is not worth my time, it will get cut out. And I love sharing with the public my internal ideas every week. So please make sure you do your part by getting the message out there and helping us by getting likes, subscribes, whatever it is. I don't do all this social media stuff. So thank you guys. Take care. And we'll talk to you next week. Take care.